Welcome to the Story Lab. I hope you enjoy this story. Let's begin. The gravel crunched under our tires as we pulled up to the sprawling estate. I cut the engine and took a deep breath, my eyes scanning the grand facade before us. Well, here we are, I said, turning to Serena. Your cousin's place is impressive. Serena nodded, her gaze fixed on the manor. Evan's family has owned this estate for generations. It's beautiful, isn't it? I couldn't shake an uneasy feeling as we stepped out of the car. The air felt heavy, charged with something I couldn't quite place. Graham, is that you? A familiar voice called out. I turned to see Clara, an old friend from college, waving as she approached. Her presence was unexpected but welcome. Clara, what a surprise, I said, embracing her. I had no idea you'd be here. She laughed, her eyes twinkling. Well, I couldn't miss Evan's big day, could I? It's been too long, Graham. How have you been? As we caught up, I noticed Clara's gaze darting around, as if she was on edge. When Serena excused herself to find Evan, Clara leaned in close. Graham, be careful here, she whispered. This place, it has secrets. Dark ones. I frowned, caught off guard by her warning. What do you mean? Clara shook her head, glancing around nervously. I can't say more right now. Just keep your eyes open, okay? Before I could press her further, Serena returned with Evan in tow. As introductions were made, I studied Evan closely. He seemed charming enough, but there was something in his eyes that didn't quite match his easy smile. Graham, it's great to finally meet you, Evan said, shaking my hand firmly. Serena's told me so much about you. Likewise, I replied, forcing a smile. Congratulations on your upcoming wedding. As we chatted, Serena's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her face paling slightly. Everything okay? I asked, concerned. She plastered on a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Oh, just some last-minute wedding details. Nothing to worry about. But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers tightened around her phone. Something was off. As we were shown to our room, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had stepped into something far more complex than a simple family wedding. Clara's warning echoed in my mind, and I resolved to keep my wits about me. This place is beautiful, Serena said as we unpacked, but it feels, I don't know, different somehow. I nodded, studying her face. Yeah, I noticed that too. Is everything all right, Serena? You seem on edge. She waved off my concern. It's just pre-wedding jitters. Not mine, of course, but you know how these things can be. I wasn't convinced, but I let it go for now. As night fell, the estate took on an even more mysterious air. Shadows seemed to stretch and dance in the flickering candlelight, and whispered conversations drifted through the halls. Later that evening, as we prepared for bed, I noticed Serena checking her phone again. Another wedding detail? I asked, trying to keep my tone light. She jumped slightly, quickly locking her screen. Oh, yes. Just confirming some arrangements. I wanted to push further, to unravel the web of secrets I could feel tightening around us. But as I opened my mouth to speak, a knock at the door interrupted us. It was Evan, looking slightly disheveled. Sorry to bother you both so late. Serena, could I borrow you for a moment? There's a family matter we need to discuss. Serena glanced at me, then back to Evan. Of course. I'll be right back, Graham. As they left, I couldn't help but feel like I was being left out of something important. I tried to shake off the paranoia, but Clara's words kept echoing in my mind. What secrets was this estate hiding? And more importantly, what wasn't Serena telling me? The digital clock on the nightstand blinked 2:37 a.m. when I stirred, reaching for my phone out of habit. The battery icon flashed red, nearly drained. I groaned, remembering I'd forgotten to pack my charger. Serena, I whispered, turning to her side of the bed. It was empty, the sheets cold. My heart rate picked up. Where was she? I slipped out of bed, the hardwood floor cool against my bare feet. The hallway was dimly lit, shadows dancing on the walls from the flickering sconces. As I padded down the corridor, a faint murmur of voices caught my attention. Following the sound, I found myself outside Evan's room. The door was slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling out. I hesitated, torn between my growing suspicion and the need to respect privacy. Then I heard Serena's voice, low and urgent. "We can't keep doing this, Evan. It's not right." My blood ran cold. Before I could process what I'd heard, the door opened wider. Serena emerged, her face flushed and hair disheveled. She froze when she saw me, eyes wide with panic. "Graham, I didn't expect you to be up." I struggled to keep my voice steady. "I was looking for a phone charger." "What are you doing here, Serena?" She fumbled for words, her hand unconsciously moving to her neck. That's when I noticed the telltale marks on her skin. "Hickeys." "It's not what you think," she blurted out, but her eyes told a different story. Anger and betrayal surged through me. "Really? Because it looks exactly like what I think." Serena's face crumpled. "Please, Graham, listen to me." But I was already moving past her, pushing open Evan's door. He stood there, shirtless and looking equally shocked. "Graham, wait," Evan started, but I cut him off. "Save it," I spat. "I trusted you both. How long has this been going on?" Serena grabbed my arm. "Please, can we talk about this privately?" I shrugged her off, my mind reeling. As I turned to leave, something caught my eye. Behind a slightly askew painting, I glimpsed the edge of a safe. "What's in there?" I demanded, gesturing to the hidden compartment. Evan's face hardened. "That's none of your business." "None of my business?" I laughed bitterly. "Like my wife sneaking into your room in the middle of the night is none of my business?" Serena stepped between us, tears streaming down her face. "Graham, please. It's complicated. We never meant for this to happen." I backed away, feeling sick. "I need some air." As I stormed out, I heard hushed, frantic whispering behind me. My head was spinning, trying to make sense of what I'd just discovered. The hickeys, the hidden safe, the secretive behavior, it all pointed to something far deeper and more twisted than a simple affair. I found myself in the garden, the cool night air doing little to calm my racing thoughts. That's when I noticed a figure moving in the shadows. "Who's there?" I called out, tensing. Clara stepped into the moonlight, her expression grim. "I hoped I wouldn't find you out here like this. You know, don't you?" I nodded, unable to form words. She sighed, sitting on a nearby bench. "I'm so sorry, Graham. I wanted to tell you earlier, but I wasn't sure." "Tell me what?" I pressed, desperate for answers. Clara hesitated, then spoke in a low voice. "Evan's in trouble, Graham. Deep trouble. Financial, legal, you name it. And Serena, she's caught in the middle of it all." My mind raced, connecting the dots. "The safe in his room. Probably evidence," Clara finished. "Or money. Maybe both. What am I supposed to do with this information?" Clara's eyes met mine, filled with sympathy and determination. "We exposed them. All of it. But we need to be smart about it. Gather evidence, build a case." I nodded slowly, a plan starting to form. "I need to confront Serena, get the truth from her." "Be careful," Clara warned. "They're desperate, Graham. There's no telling what they might do to keep their secrets." As I made my way back to the house, I steeled myself for the confrontation to come. The estate loomed before me, its grandeur now tainted by the knowledge of the corruption it harbored. I found Serena in our room, pacing nervously. When she saw me, she rushed forward. "Graham, I can explain everything," she began, but I held up a hand to stop her. "No more lies, Serena," I said firmly. "I want the truth. All of it." She hesitated, fear and guilt warring in her eyes. Then, with a shaky breath, she began to speak. The tension in the room was palpable as Serena opened her mouth to speak. But before she could utter a word, there was a sharp knock at the door. Evan's voice came through, strained and urgent. "Serena? Graham? We need to talk. All of us." I glanced at Serena, whose face had gone pale. With a sigh, I moved to open the door. Evan stood there, looking disheveled and on edge. "Can we do this somewhere more private?" he asked, his eyes darting nervously down the hallway. Without waiting for an answer, he brushed past me into the room. I closed the door behind him, my hand instinctively reaching for my phone. In one fluid motion, I started recording and slipped it into my shirt pocket. All right, I said, crossing my arms. Let's hear it. Evan paced the room. Graham, what you saw. It's not what you think. I scoffed. Really? Because it looks pretty clear to me. You and my wife, sneaking around behind my back. Serena stepped forward, her eyes brimming with tears. Graham, please. It's complicated. Then uncomplicated, I snapped. How long has this been going on? The silence that followed was deafening. Serena and Evan exchanged a look that spoke volumes. Finally, Evan spoke. It started about a year ago, he admitted, before your wedding. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. A year? You mean, even before we were married? Serena nodded, unable to meet my eyes. It was a mistake. We ended it before the wedding, I swear. But clearly, it didn't stay ended, I said, my voice cold. Evan stepped closer, his face a mask of guilt and desperation. Graham, you have to understand. We never meant for this to happen. It's just, there's history between us. History? I repeated, incredulous. What kind of history justifies this? Serena took a deep breath, her voice barely above a whisper. We're cousins, Graham, but we've always been close. Too close. The pieces started falling into place, and I felt sick to my stomach. You're telling me this is incest? They both flinched at the word, but didn't deny it. It's more than that, Evan said, his voice cracking. I'm in trouble, Graham. Deep trouble. I remembered the hidden safe, Clara's warnings. Financial trouble? He nodded. I made some bad investments. I'm in debt, a lot of debt. I thought maybe Serena could help. The implications of his words made my blood boil. So you rekindled this affair. To what? Blackmail my wife for money? Serena's head snapped up. No, it wasn't like that. I offered to help, Graham. I couldn't bear to see Evan lose everything. And you didn't think to come to me? I asked, hurt and anger warring in my chest. I'm your husband, Serena. We could have figured something out together. I was ashamed, she whispered. I didn't want you to know about our past. And then one thing led to another. Evan stepped forward, his face pleading. Graham, we know what we did was wrong. But please, you can't tell anyone about this. It would ruin us all. I laughed bitterly. Ruin you? What about me? Did you ever stop to think about how this would affect me? We'll end it, Serena said quickly. For good this time. Please, Graham, we're begging you. Keep this between us. I looked between them, these two people I thought I knew. The betrayal cut deep, but beneath my anger, a part of me pitied them. They looked so lost, so desperate. I need time to think, I said finally. It's too much to process right now. Evan nodded, relief flooding his features. Of course. Take all the time you need. Just, please, consider what's at stake here. As they turned to leave, a thought struck me. Wait, I called out. The safe in your room, Evan? What's in it? He hesitated, then sighed. Documents. Proof of my debts. Some questionable financial transactions. Nothing illegal, but nothing you'd want to come to light, I finished for him. He nodded, looking defeated. I'll show you everything, if that's what you want. Just not tonight. Please. After they left, I sank onto the bed, my head in my hands. The weight of their confession, captured on my phone, felt like a ticking time bomb. What was I going to do with this information? Little did I know, the confession I just heard was only the beginning. The days ahead would test me in ways I never imagined, pushing me to the very limits of trust, love, and self-preservation. The morning sun streamed through the curtains, but I had barely slept. My mind raced with the events of the night before. I reached for my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found Jack's number. Jack Collins, his gruff voice answered on the third ring. Jack, it's Graham. I need your help. There was a pause. Graham? It's been a while. What's going on? I took a deep breath. It's complicated. Can you come to Virginia? I'm at Evan's estate for his wedding, but things have gone sideways. Sideways how? Jack's tone sharpened. I'd rather not get into it over the phone, but I need a lawyer, and more importantly, I need a friend. Jack sighed. All right, I'll catch the next train. Text me the details. Thanks, Jack. I owe you one. As I hung up, a notification popped up on my screen. An unknown number. The message sent a chill down my spine. Drop it, or else. I deleted the message, my resolve hardening. Whoever was behind this, they were scared. Good. I made my way downstairs, the house unnaturally quiet. In the kitchen, I found Clara nursing a cup of coffee. You look like hell, she said, pushing a mug towards me. I managed a weak smile. Thanks for the compliment. Any sign of Serena or Evan? Clara shook her head. Not a peep. What are you going to do, Graham? I've called in reinforcements. My friend Jack, he's a lawyer. He'll be here soon. Clara nodded approvingly. Smart move. You'll need all the help you can get. I glanced at my watch. I should head to the station to pick him up. Want to come along? I'll pass, Clara said. But be careful, Graham. I don't trust anyone in this house right now. I nodded, grabbing my car keys. The drive to the station was uneventful, the Virginia countryside a blur of green. As I approached a sharp turn, I pressed the brake pedal. Nothing happened. My heart raced as I pumped the brakes frantically. The car kept accelerating. The turn was coming up fast. Come on, I muttered, searching for the emergency brake. I yanked it hard, the car fishtailing wildly. For a moment, I thought I was going to flip, but somehow, I managed to bring the car to a screeching halt mere inches from a tree. My hands shook as I fumbled for my phone. Another message from the unknown number. Last warning. I dialed Jack immediately. Graham? I'm just boarding the train now. Jack, someone tampered with my brakes. I nearly crashed. Jesus Christ, Jack swore. Are you okay? Shaken up, but fine. Can you grab a taxi when you arrive? And maybe bring a tow truck? Consider it done. Graham, what the hell have you gotten yourself into? I let out a bitter laugh. I wish I knew, Jack. I wish I knew. As I waited for Jack, I decided to check the car. That's when I noticed the empty space in the glove compartment where my father's watch should have been. The last gift he gave me before he died. Looking for something? I spun around to find Evan leaning against a tree, twirling my father's watch between his fingers. You bastard, I snarled, taking a step towards him. Evan held up his hands, a smirk playing on his lips. Now, Graham, let's not do anything rash. We're family, after all. Family? I spat. Is that what you call sleeping with my wife? Evan's smirk faltered. You don't understand, Graham. There's so much more at stake here than you realize. Then enlighten me, I challenged. Evan opened his mouth to speak, but the sound of an approaching car cut him off. Jack had arrived with the tow truck. This isn't over, Evan hissed, tossing me the watch before disappearing into the woods. Jack climbed out of the taxi, his eyes widening as he took in the scene. Graham, what the hell is going on? I clasped his shoulder, relief washing over me. It's a long story, Jack, but I'm damn glad you're here. The mechanic wiped his hands on a greasy rag, his expression grim. Yep, someone definitely tampered with your brakes. Cut the line clean through. You're lucky to be alive, mister. Jack nodded, snapping photos of the damage with his phone. We'll need a full report. This is attempted murder. The reality of the situation's sinking in. Who would do this, Jack? And why? That's what we're going to find out, Jack said, his jaw set. Come on, let's grab some coffee. You can fill me in on everything. At a nearby diner, I recounted the events of the past few days. Jack listened intently, his brow furrowing deeper with each revelation. So let me get this straight, Jack said, leaning back in the booth. Your wife is having an affair with her cousin. They're possibly involved in some financial scheme. And now they or someone is trying to kill you? I nodded, stirring my untouched coffee. That about sums it up. Should we involve the police? Jack asked. No, I want to handle this matter on my own, Evan challenged me. And if things go out of hand, we'll immediately call them. Jack whistled low. Graham, this is serious. If you want that, then we need to gather more evidence before we make any moves. Have you considered setting up some surveillance? You mean like hidden cameras? I asked. Exactly. We need concrete proof of what's going on in that house. As we discussed the logistics, I noticed a young woman at the counter keeping a close eye on us. She approached our table, looking nervous. "Excuse me," she said in a low voice. I couldn't help overhearing. "I think I might be able to help you." Jack and I exchanged glances. "And you are?" Jack asked. "Lucy," she replied. "I work as a maid at the estate. But that's not the whole truth." I leaned forward, intrigued. "Go on." Lucy took a deep breath. "I'm actually working undercover for a private investigation firm. One of Evan's family members hired us, suspecting something was off." "Why are you telling us this?" I asked. "Because I think we're on the same side," Lucy said. "And I have access to parts of the house you don't." Jack nodded slowly. "This could be useful, Graham, but we need to be careful." I turned to Lucy. "What exactly have you found out?" Lucy glanced around the diner before leaning in closer. "Evan's in deep with some dangerous people. I've overheard phone calls, threats being made. And Serena, she's not just a victim in this. She's been actively helping him cover his tracks." The news hit me like a punch to the gut. "You're sure about this?" Lucy nodded solemnly. "I've seen documents, heard conversations. They're planning something big, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to keep it quiet." Jack pulled out a notepad. "We need details, Lucy. Names, dates, anything you can remember." As Lucy began to recount what she discovered, I felt a mix of anger and determination rising within me. Serena's betrayal cut deep, but now it was about more than just our marriage. Lives were at stake. "All right," I said, my voice steady. "Let's take these bastards down." Jack raised an eyebrow. "You sure about this, Graham? Once we start, there's no going back." I met his gaze, my resolve firm. "I'm sure. They tried to kill me, Jack. This ends now." Lucy nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "I'm in. Where do we start?" Jack leaned back, a glint in his eye. "First, we gather evidence. Lucy, you'll be our eyes and ears inside the house. Graham, you and I will set up surveillance from the outside. We need to be smart about this, catch them red-handed." I nodded, feeling a sense of purpose for the first time since this nightmare began. "And then what?" "Then," Jack said, his voice hard, "we bring the whole house of cards tumbling down." As we left the diner, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. But this time, instead of fear, I felt a surge of determination. The game was on, and I intended to win. Jack and I managed to install hidden cameras in key areas of the estate, while Lucy fed us information from the inside. The pieces of the puzzle were slowly coming together, and the picture they formed was uglier than I could have imagined. "Graham," Jack called, waving me over to his laptop. "You need to see this." I leaned in, watching grainy footage of Evan in his study. He was on the phone, his face twisted with anger. "I don't care what it takes," Evan hissed into the receiver. "Get it done, or we're all going down." Jack paused the video. "This was taken last night. Whatever they're planning, it's happening soon." I nodded, my jaw clenched. "We need to move fast. The wedding's in 2 days." As if on cue, my phone buzzed. It was Clara. "Graham," she said, her voice hushed. "I need to talk to you. In private." We met in the garden, away from prying eyes and ears. Clara looked around nervously before speaking. "I haven't been entirely honest with you," she admitted. "I'm not just here as a wedding guest. I'm working on a story about corruption in high society." And Evan's name kept coming up in my research. I let out a bitter laugh. "Seems like everyone here has an agenda." Clara's eyes flashed with determination. "I want to help, Graham. My resources, my connections, they're all at your disposal." I studied her face, searching for any sign of deception. Finding none, I nodded. "All right, but from now on, full transparency. No more secrets." As Clara filled me in on what she'd uncovered, a plan began to form in my mind. I called Jack over, and together, we hashed out the details. "It's risky," Jack warned. "If this goes wrong." "It won't," I said firmly. "It can't. We have one shot at this, and we're going to make it count." Just then, Lucy approached, her face pale. "Graham, Jack, Serena's parents are here. They're asking to speak with you." My heart sank. This was a complication we didn't need. But as I met Jack's eyes, I realized it might also be an opportunity. Bring them to the study, I said. It's time they knew the truth. The meeting with Serena's parents was tense, to say the least. As I laid out the evidence we'd gathered, their expressions ranged from disbelief to horror. This can't be true, Serena's mother whispered. Our daughter. She wouldn't. I'm sorry, I said, my voice gentle but firm. But we have proof. Serena and Evan. They're involved in something dangerous, and they need to be stopped. Serena's father, his face ashen, spoke up. What can we do? Jack leaned forward. We have a plan, but we'll need your help to pull it off. As we outlined our strategy, I could see the resolve hardening in their eyes. They were in. The next morning, as final preparations for the wedding were underway, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The pieces were in place. Now, it was time to spring the trap. I found Serena in our room, adjusting her bridesmaid dress. For a moment, looking at her, I felt a pang of what might have been. Then I steeled myself. We need to talk, I said, my voice steady. Serena turned, her eyes wary. Graham, Save it. I cut her off. I know everything, Serena. The affair, the financial schemes, all of it. Her face paled. You don't understand. You're right, I said coldly. I don't understand how you could betray me like this, but it doesn't matter now. It's over. As I turned to leave, Serena grabbed my arm. Graham, please. We can fix this. We can start over. I looked into her eyes, searching for any trace of the woman I thought I'd married. Finding none, I gently removed her hand. No, Serena, we can't. As I walked away, I heard her begin to sob, but I didn't look back. The endgame was approaching, and there was no room for sentiment. In the hallway, I met Jack's gaze. He nodded, a silent confirmation that everything was ready. It's time, I said. Jack clasped my shoulder. Let's do this. I took a deep breath, thinking of all that had led to this moment. The lies, the betrayal, the attempts on my life. My resolve hardened. I said, let's end this. The storm was about to break. Alice's call came just as I was about to head downstairs for dinner. Her voice crackled with urgency over the line. Graham, I found something. You need to see this now. I glanced at my watch. Can it wait until after dinner? Trust me, it can't, Alice insisted. Meet me in the library in 5 minutes. Curiosity piqued, I made my way to the library, careful not to draw attention. Alice was already there, hunched over a laptop, her face illuminated by the screen. What VE you got? I asked, closing the door behind me. Alice looked up, her eyes wide. Evan's not just in debt, Graham. He's been embezzling money from your company. My stomach dropped. What? How? She turned the laptop towards me. Look at these documents. They're forged, but they're good. Really good. Evan and Serena have been siphoning funds for months. I scanned the documents, my anger rising with each line. I can't believe this. How did we miss it? They were clever, Alice explained, but not clever enough. And that's not all. I braced myself. What else? Alice took a deep breath. Evan has a child. With another woman. The room seemed to spin. A child? Are you sure? She nodded grimly. DNA test results, child support payments, the works. All hidden, of course, but I found them. I sank into a nearby chair, my mind reeling. This is... God, Alice. This is worse than I thought. I know, she said softly, but now we have what we need to take them down. Just then, there was a knock at the door. We froze. Graham? Are you in there? It was Serena. I exchanged a panicked look with Alice. She quickly closed the laptop and slid it into her bag. Just a second, I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. I opened the door, forcing a smile. Serena stood there, looking concerned. Everything okay? You missed dinner, she said. I nodded, perhaps too quickly. Yeah, just catching up with Alice about some work stuff. Lost track of time. Serena's eyes narrowed slightly. Work stuff? During the wedding week? You know how it is. I laughed nervously. Business never sleeps. She didn't look convinced but didn't press further. Well, if you're done, Evan wants to talk to you. He's in his study. My heart raced. Did he suspect something? Sure, I'll be right there. As Serena left, I turned back to Alice. We need to move fast. Get this information to Jack. I'll stall Evan. Alice nodded, her face grim. Be careful, Graham. They're cornered now. Who knows what they might do? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. The endgame was approaching, and the stakes had never been higher. My heart pounded as I approached Evan's study. The weight of what I just learned from Alice pressed heavily on my mind. I paused outside the door, taking a deep breath to steady myself. Jack, I whispered into my phone. I'm about to confront Evan. Stay on the line. Graham, wait. Jack's voice crackled through the speaker. We should do this together. It's too dangerous. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. No time. He's suspicious already. I need to handle this now. Before Jack could protest further, I pushed open the door. Evan stood by the window, his back to me. The room was dimly lit, casting long shadows across the floor. Ah, Graham, Evan said, turning to face me. Glad you could join me. We need to talk. I stepped inside, my senses on high alert. Yes, we do. About a lot of things, actually. Evan's eyes narrowed. Oh? Like what? I opened my mouth to respond, but suddenly Evan lunged forward, slamming the door shut and locking it in one swift motion. What the hell? I exclaimed, stumbling backward. Evan's face contorted with rage. Don't play dumb with me, Graham. I know you've been snooping around. What do you think you know? My mind raced. How much should I reveal? I decided to start with the affair. I know about you and Serena. How long did you think you could keep that hidden? Evan laughed bitterly. Is that all? Old news, Graham. But I'm more interested in what else you've been digging up. I watched in horror as he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a gun. Evan, what are you doing? I asked, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to stay calm. He leveled the gun at me, his hands surprisingly steady. I'm protecting what's mine. Now, tell me exactly what you know and who else is involved. I raised my hands slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. Evan, think about what you're doing. This isn't going to solve anything. Shut up, he shouted, his composure cracking. You have no idea what's at stake here. I've worked too hard, sacrificed too much to let you ruin everything now. As Evan ranted, I remembered the hidden camera Jack and I had installed earlier. It was capturing everything. I just needed to keep him talking. What about your child, Evan? I asked, watching his face carefully. Does your fiancé know about that? Evan's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed dangerously. How did you? Who told you about that? It doesn't matter, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. What matters is that your whole house of cards is about to come crashing down. The embezzlement, the affair, all of it. Evan's hand tightened on the gun. You're bluffing. You can't prove anything. Just then, a commotion erupted outside the door. Graham? Graham, are you in there? It was Serena's parents. Evan's attention wavered for a split second, and I saw my chance. I lunged forward, grappling for the gun. We struggled, the weapon between us, fingers fighting for control of the trigger. Help! I shouted, hoping someone would hear. In here. The door burst open, Serena's parents rushing in, their faces a mix of shock and horror at the scene before them. In the chaos that followed, I managed to wrench the gun from Evan's grasp. Panting, I backed away, keeping the weapon trained on him. It's over, Evan, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. The police are on their way. Evan's face contorted with a mix of rage and defeat. You've ruined everything, he spat. As if on cue, Jack burst into the room, followed closely by 2 police officers. Graham, are you all right? Jack asked, his eyes darting between me and the gun in my hand. I nodded, slowly lowering the weapon. I'm fine, but Evan here has a lot of explaining to do. As the officers moved to restrain Evan, I caught sight of Serena in the doorway, her face pale with shock. Graham, she whispered, what have you done? I met her gaze, feeling a mix of sadness and resolve. What I had to do, Serena. The truth always comes out in the end. The next few moments were a blur of activity. The police officers handcuffed Evan, reading him his rights as he glared daggers at me. Serena's parents stood shell-shocked, trying to make sense of the scene before them. "Graham," Jack said, pulling me aside. "We need to move quickly. Clara's here with her camera crew. We can expose everything now, in front of all the guests." I nodded, my resolve strengthening. "Let's do it. Where's Serena?" As if in answer to my question, a commotion erupted from down the hall. We rushed out to see Alice and Lucy, the undercover maid, restraining a frantic Serena. "Let me go," Serena shouted, struggling against their grip. "I need to leave." I approached slowly, my heart heavy. "Serena, it's over. There's nowhere to run." She turned to me, her eyes wild with panic. "Graham, please. You don't understand. I had no choice." "There's always a choice, Serena," I said softly, "and you made yours." As the police officers took Serena into custody, I turned to Jack. "Are we ready?" He nodded grimly. "As ready as we'll ever be." Clara's set up in the main hall. All the guests are there. We made our way downstairs, the weight of what we were about to do settling heavily on my shoulders. As we entered the main hall, a hush fell over the crowd. Confused murmurs rippled through the room as they took in our grim expressions and the police officers flanking us. Clara stepped forward, her camera crew poised to capture every moment. "Graham," she said softly, "are you sure about this?" I took a deep breath, scanning the faces of friends and family gathered for what was supposed to be a joyous occasion. "I'm sure. They deserve to know the truth." Stepping up to the makeshift podium, I cleared my throat. The room fell silent, all eyes on me. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I'm sorry to interrupt the festivities, but there's something you all need to know." I recounted the events of the past week, laying bare the betrayal, the lies, and the criminal activities that had been hidden behind the facade of wealth and respectability. Gasps and murmurs of disbelief rippled through the crowd as I played the recording of Serena and Evan's confession. "But that's not all," I continued, nodding to Alice. She stepped forward, distributing copies of the forged documents and financial records we'd uncovered. "Evan Brooks and Serena Lawson have been embezzling funds from my company and others," I explained, my voice growing stronger with each word. "They've committed fraud on a massive scale, and they were willing to go to any lengths to keep it hidden, including attempted murder." The room erupted in shocked exclamations. I caught sight of Evan's fiancée, her face a mask of hurt and betrayal. "I'm sorry you all had to find out this way," I said, my voice softening. But the truth had to come out. As I stepped down from the podium, the room buzzed with a mix of anger, disbelief, and sorrow. Clara's camera crew captured it all, ensuring that the scandal would reach far beyond the walls of this estate. Jack approached me, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing, Graham. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary." I nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. "What happens now?" "Now," Jack said, a determined glint in his eye, "we make sure they face the full consequences of their actions." As the police began questioning guests and gathering statements, I stood apart from the crowd, watching as the life I thought I knew crumbled around me. But amidst the chaos and pain, I felt a glimmer of hope. The truth was out, and with it came the possibility of a new beginning. The aftermath of my revelation was chaos. Guests huddled in shocked groups, whispering furiously. Some were on their phones, no doubt spreading the news far and wide. The police moved through the crowd, taking statements and gathering evidence. I stood off to the side, watching it all unfold, when a commotion near the entrance caught my attention. Serena had broken free from the officers holding her and was pushing her way through the crowd towards me. "Graham!" she cried, her face streaked with tears. "How could you do this? To me? To us?" I felt a surge of anger. "How could I? How could you, Serena? You betrayed everything we had." She reached for me, but I stepped back. "It wasn't like that," she pleaded. "I love you. I only wanted to protect you." I laughed bitterly. "Protect me? By embezzling from my company? By having an affair with your cousin? By trying to kill me?" Serena's face crumpled. "The car, that wasn't me. I swear." Graham, I never wanted to hurt you. Before I could respond, Jack appeared at my side. Graham, the police need your statement. And Serena, I suggest you save your explanations for your lawyer. As the officers led Serena away, I turned to Jack. What now? He squeezed my shoulder reassuringly. Now, we make sure justice is served. I've already filed for an emergency freeze on Evan and Serena's assets. They won't be able to touch a penny while this is investigated. I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. Thank you, Jack, for everything. Don't thank me yet, he said grimly. This is just the beginning. The legal battle ahead won't be easy. Alice approached, her face grim. Graham, there's something else you need to see. She handed me a folder. Inside were more documents, these even more damning than the last. What is this? I asked, flipping through the pages. Alice's voice was tight. Proof that Serena was involved in the car sabotage. She may not have done it herself, but she knew about it, and she did nothing to stop it. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. I staggered, Jack steadying me with a hand on my arm. I'm sorry, Graham, Alice said softly. I know this isn't easy to hear. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. No, it's not. But I need to know the truth. All of it. As the night wore on, more revelations came to light. Clara's live broadcast ensured that the scandal spread like wildfire. Social media exploded with the news, and by morning, it would be national headlines. Evan and Serena were taken away in separate police cars, their faces plastered across every news channel. The wedding guests dispersed, shell-shocked and reeling from the night's events. As dawn broke, I found myself alone in the library, surrounded by the evidence of Evan and Serena's crimes. Jack entered quietly, 2 cups of coffee in hand. Thought you could use this, he said, handing me a mug. I accepted it gratefully. Thanks. Has there been any word? Jack nodded. The DA is moving fast. They'll be arraigned this morning. With the evidence we have, it's looking at multiple felony charges. Embezzlement, fraud, attempted murder. They're going away for a long time, Graham. I sighed, feeling the weight of it all. I should feel relieved, shouldn't I? But all I feel is empty. Jack sat beside me. That's normal. You've been through a trauma, Graham. It'll take time to process. What do I do now? I asked, suddenly feeling lost. Now, Jack said firmly, you start rebuilding. Your life, your business, your trust in people. It won't be easy, but you're not alone. You've got friends who care about you. As if to prove his point, Alice and Clara entered the room. We thought we'd find you here, Clara said softly. How are you holding up? I managed a weak smile. As well as can be expected, I suppose. Alice sat on my other side. We're here for you, Graham. Whatever you need. Looking at their concerned faces, I felt a surge of gratitude. These people, who had stood by me through this nightmare, were my true family now. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. All of you. I couldn't have done this without you. As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting a warm glow through the library windows, I felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead would be difficult, but I wasn't walking it alone. And for the first time in what felt like ages, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the future could be brighter than the past. The criminal courtroom buzzed with tension as I took my seat. Jack, my steadfast friend and lawyer, leaned in close. After many trials, presenting evidence, and a lot of testimony against Serena and Evan, it was time for the finale judgment. Ready for this, Graham? I nodded, my throat dry. As I'll ever be. The judge entered, and we all stood. As she began to speak, my heart raced. In the case of the state versus Brooks and Lawson, this court finds the defendants guilty on all charges. A collective gasp rippled through the room. I closed my eyes, relief washing over me. Mr. Brooks, you are hereby sentenced to 15 years in prison for attempted murder, fraud, and embezzlement. Mrs. Lawson, you are sentenced to 10 years for your involvement in these crimes. I watched Serena crumple in her seat, her face ashen. Evan remained stoic, but defeat clouded his eyes. As we left the courtroom, reporters swarmed us. Jack fielded their questions while guiding me to a quiet corner. The criminal trial's over, Graham, he said. But we still have the divorce proceedings and family court. I nodded, feeling a mix of exhaustion and determination. When's the hearing? Next week. I've got all the evidence ready. With the criminal convictions, it should be straightforward. Thanks, Jack, for everything. He squeezed my shoulder. That's what friends are for. Later that evening, I sat in my new apartment, staring at the divorce papers. A knock at the door startled me. Coming, I called. Alice stood there, a bottle of wine in hand. Thought you could use some company. I welcomed her in, grateful for the distraction. As we settled on the couch, she poured us each a glass. To justice served, she toasted. I clinked my glass against hers. And to friends who stick by you through hell. Alice's eyes softened. You know, Graham, what you've been through, it would break most people. I sipped my wine, considering her words. Sometimes I don't know how I'm still standing. Because you're stronger than you think, she replied. And you've got a good support system. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Clara. Congrats on the verdict. My exposé just went to print. Coffee tomorrow? I showed Alice the message. You should go, she encouraged. Clara's been a good friend through all this. I nodded, typing out a quick reply. The next morning, I met Clara at our usual spot. She was already there, laptop open. Graham, she called, waving me over. How are you holding up? I slid into the seat across from her. Better than expected. Your article, it's out? She nodded, turning her laptop to face me. Front page. The Hidden Scars. A tale of betrayal in high society. It's making waves. I skimmed the article, my stomach churning at the details laid bare. But there was also a sense of vindication. You've done good work here, Clara, I said, meeting her eyes. Thank you. She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. You're the brave one, Graham. You stood up to them, exposed the truth. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping our coffee. So, Clara ventured. What's next? I leaned back, considering. Family court next week. Then rebuilding my business. After Serena and Evan's embezzlement, there's a lot of damage control to do. Clara nodded encouragingly. And personally? I felt a small smile forming. One day at a time. But I'm open to possibilities. As we continued chatting, I felt a spark of hope ignite in my chest. The following week, I found myself in family court. Jack stood beside me, a calm presence amidst my nerves. All rise, the bailiff called as the judge entered. As we took our seats, I caught sight of Serena across the room. She looked pale and drawn, a far cry from the woman I'd married. The judge looked over her papers. We're here today to finalize the divorce of Graham and Serena Lawson. Given the circumstances and the evidence presented, I see no reason to delay proceedings. She turned to me. Mr. Lawson, do you wish to proceed with the divorce? I stood, my voice steady. Yes, Your Honor. She nodded, then addressed Serena. Mrs. Lawson, do you contest this divorce? Serena's voice was barely audible. No, Your Honor. The judge continued, given the criminal convictions and the evidence of financial misconduct, this court finds in favor of Mr. Lawson. All assets acquired during the marriage will be awarded to him, and Mrs. Lawson will be required to pay restitution for her part in the embezzlement scheme. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders as the judge's gavel came down, finalizing the divorce. As we left the courtroom, Jack patted me on the back. It's done, Graham. You're officially a free man. I let out a long breath. It doesn't feel real yet. It will, he assured me. Now, let's go celebrate. Drinks are on me. We met Alice and Clara at a nearby bar. As I walked in, they both stood to hug me. To Graham, Alice toasted once we were seated. May your future be brighter than your past. Clara raised her glass. And may you never have to deal with backstabbing relatives again. I couldn't help but laugh, the sound feeling foreign but welcome. As the evening wore on, I found myself opening up more than I had in months. You know, I mused, a year ago, I thought I had it all figured out. Successful business, loving wife. Shows how wrong you can be. Alice leaned in. But look at what you've gained, Graham. True friends, self-respect, and the knowledge that you can weather any storm. Clara nodded in agreement. Plus, you've inspired others. My article has prompted several people to come forward with their own stories of family betrayal and financial abuse. I felt a warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the whiskey. I couldn't have done it without all of you. Jack raised his glass. To teamwork, then, and to new beginnings. As we clinked glasses, I felt truly hopeful for the first time in ages. The next morning, I stood in my new office, surveying the space. It was smaller than my old one, but it felt like a fresh start. My phone rang. Jack's familiar tone. "Graham," he said when I answered. "Great news. The judge just approved the asset freeze on Serena and Evan's accounts. We can start the process of recovering your stolen funds." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. That's incredible, Jack. "Don't celebrate yet," he chuckled. "We've got a mountain of paperwork ahead." "But Graham, you're going to be okay." A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. It was Clara, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," she said, handing me a cup. "First day back at work and all." I smiled, genuinely grateful. "You're a lifesaver." She perched on the edge of my desk. "So, what's the game plan?" I took a sip of coffee, considering. Step 1, damage control. I need to reassure our clients that despite the scandal, we're still a solid investment. Clara nodded. "I might be able to help with that. How about an exclusive interview? Show the world the man behind the headlines?" I hesitated. "I don't know, Clara. I'm not sure I'm ready to bare my soul to the world." She placed a hand on my arm. "It doesn't have to be about the pain, Graham. It can be about resilience, about moving forward. Your story could help others who feel trapped in similar situations." I mulled it over. "Let me think about it." "Of course," she smiled. "No pressure. I'm here as a friend first, journalist second." The next few weeks flew by in a blur of meetings, phone calls, and late nights at the office. Slowly but surely, I began to see progress. Clients who had been wavering decided to stay. New opportunities began to present themselves. One evening, as I was packing up to leave, my phone buzzed with a text from Alice. "Turn on the news." Now. Curious, I flipped on the small TV in my office. There, splashed across the screen, was Evan's face. The ticker at the bottom read, "Convicted fraudster Evan Brooks attempts to take his life in prison." I sank into my chair, a whirlwind of emotions coursing through me. Despite everything, I couldn't find it in myself to feel satisfaction at Evan's suffering. My phone rang. It was Jack. "You seeing this?" he asked without preamble. "Yeah," I replied, my voice hollow. "Any details?" "Not much. He's alive, but in critical condition." "Graham, Serena's asking to see you." I felt my chest tighten. "Why?" "She says she has information. Something about hidden assets that weren't uncovered in the trial." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the past settling on my shoulders once again. "What do you think I should do?" Jack sighed. "Legally, it could be beneficial, but personally, that's your call, Graham. Whatever you decide, I've got your back." As I hung up, I stared at Evan's face on the TV screen. The man who had nearly destroyed my life now looked small and defeated. I thought about Serena, sitting in a prison cell, finally ready to come clean. I picked up my phone again, dialing Alice's number. "Hey," I said when she answered. "Can you meet me for a drink? I could use some advice." An hour later, I sat across from Alice, nursing a scotch and recounting my conversation with Jack. "So," Alice said after I finished, "what are you thinking?" I swirled the ice in my glass. Part of me wants to ignore it, leave the past in the past. But if there are hidden assets, Alice nodded. "You have a right to know, and to recover what's rightfully yours." "But at what cost?" I asked, more to myself than to her. "Do I really want to open that door again?" She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Whatever you decide, Graham, remember this. You're not the same man you were when this all started. You're stronger now, wiser." I met her eyes, seeing the unwavering support there. "Thanks, Alice, for everything." As I left the bar, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. I didn't have all the answers yet, but I knew I had the strength to face whatever came next. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, that uncertainty felt more like possibility than fear. The scars of betrayal would always be a part of my story, but they were no longer the whole story. I was Graham Lawson, survivor, friend, and a man ready to write the next chapter of his life. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.